Hello and welcome to 365 Days Towards Racial Change. My name is Tomlins Nyback, and we are here talking about Black issues, problems in America, successes, failures, oppression, vulnerabilities, strides for excellence, everything, all the above. We're wondering how slavery impacted um, Blacks in America. Are there any connections between where Blacks are today, where uh, Blacks come from back in the past? Is there any connection? Are there any lingering effects of having that industry? Does that industry prevail today in some form? So that's what we're doing here for this whole year. This is, oh shoot, I think this is day 96 we're at. Starting to lose count. I'm pretty sure we're at day 96. And don't worry, it'll be right on the notes. But anyway, we just keep moving along, and we're looking at politics, relationships, abuses, history, finances is a big chunk of this. Moralities, international impact, literacies of all kinds, um, ad infinitum. It's the human. It's aspects of the human condition related to slavery. Uh, does there need to be change? Is change happening? Are things getting worse or better? Everything above. Two thoughts emerge from this project as I move through it. First thought has two parts. First part is, does the slave mind, the conditioning from slavery, prevail? Is that getting passed down from generation to generation towards Black folks? And if that is true, are there ways to combat it and to kind of turn that momentum in another direction? The second part of that first thought is, does the white mind of entitlement, privilege, expectation of favor prevail from generation to generation, especially from the slavery times? Are the white people just simply in place and they just go on having these lives of fulfillment, of wealth, and not so much financially, materially as you can expect, but the wealth of moving in the world with little hindrances, with no I don't know, with not as many encumbrances. You see, the Black life, it's it's about, for me, in my experience, the Black life's been about navigating all these encumbrances. Um, I would say we Blacks, especially descended from slaves, we bear the dysfunction of the nation, a lot of negativity we bear, and that's from it. There's economic reasons, moral reasons, a lot of issues associated with that, but I have to navigate those things just to be even to give me a fighting chance to participate as white folks do. I mean, think about it. Um, who's going to climb stairs better? The person in a wheelchair who's hindered, so who's going to have to overcome his disability in walking, or the person who can just walk, who has command of their legs. So that's some of the things what I'm trying to tease out in that first thought. Second thought is more economic, more financial. It's the idea that clears up the roots of some of these problems in America for blacks for me much more readily, and that is financial literacy. How uh, the less you know, the more you're at the mercy of those who do. And I'm coming across it in my research and my reading. I had friends, I got a lot of white friends, right? So this is not a hate, this is not promoting hate of any race. We're just talking realistically about institutions and stuff. You'll hear me talk negatively about some of the dynamics, Hispanics, Asians, whites, Arabs, things like that. But those are the dynamics. I'm not talking about all of those people. I have friends all over the place, and mostly white. Anyway, I was having breakfast with one of my white friends. He's a guy that I would actually um, go to for financial counsel now that I've had a conversation with him today and has opened the doors. It's like, wow, I have ready access to this man. He's willing to share with me, kind of like Robert Kiyosaki's Mysterious Rich Dad. I found one for me. It's amazing. So we had a financial conversation, and I'm going to start sponging. He's right there on what I've been studying, and I had no idea. I've met him through some other channels, and we just became great friends. Now he's a resource, willing resource, articulate. It's like I hit the lottery. But then, in my conversation with him today, I realized, wow, I'm so at the mercy of the financial institutions and institutions in America, because I don't know how things work. I don't know how to articulate questions. I don't know, understand. We are conditioned. I'm real big on financial literacy, even bigger now after today's experience. But this conditioning to get the masses, white, black, Asian, brown, green, red, this conditioning for the masses is not proper. And I don't think it's necessary. I could see part of the overseers of the nation being like, oh, you just teach them all this stuff. Education has really we need some serious reform in education. Uh, I can't believe like what I needed to learn as far as reading and writing happened early, well before I hit um, high school. I had everything I needed to make it in this world, you know. Um, but 13 years is a long time. 13, 14 years is a long time to hold a person hostage, set them out in the world. I could see where a lot of our problems are coming from, and it's right there in the classroom. We need to get better with that, big time. Uh, so that's the first two major things that we want to talk about. Now, what's got me on fire? Well, a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. He's much more articulate about the racial aspect, not so much the particulars, specifics of financial literacy. Although he has a business mind, but his videos and books aren't about financial literacy proper. I read 3 of his books, and I want you to get these books, please. A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice. And Dr. Anderson's Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. I referenced these books heavily through this year. We're going through a separate series right now on some other issues about the signers of the Declaration of Independence, but we jump back and forth through a lot of things. We even have story time, a fictional look at slave life in America, Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Very important to me that we do that. Her work influences theater, relationships, stereotypes. We get blackface from her work. Her work was the second bestseller after the Bible when it came out in mid-1800s. It was a series actually of articles in an abolitionist paper, but then compiled into one text there. Awesome reading. I'm almost finished with it. And so we get it. I want you to, again, get the material, do your own research. It's a good read. You'll find it hard to put down. I don't think, whatever your interests are, I think you'll find yourself in the pages of her book. Behind me, you see the hashtag #US2, kind of response to the hashtag #MeToo movement. Everything in America, we can respond openly and freely. Hashtag #MeToo's, white women discoursing, fellowshipping, supporting, although I'm sure they would argue that they are inclusive and all that. Hashtag #US2 is black women discoursing, fellowshipping, supporting one another, although they would argue that they are inclusive and everything. You know, that's why we have Democrat, Republican, chocolate, and vanilla. Okay, here we go. Check out Blog Enough, BLAGGENUF, online there. Kind of a black Facebook. Right, here we go again. Oh, Dr. Anderson, you can find more of his work at powernomics.com and the Heritage Institute. Oh, what else? I think that's it with my standard introduction. We're PC then, we're just walking our way through the signers of the Declaration of Independence, 56 men, so I do about 2 a day, 28 entries, excuse me, and I'm not bored. I work nights. Forget about that. Anyway, you're saying, dude, you're yawning. How motivated are you for this project? Walk a mile in my shoes, and you'll understand my fatigue and schedule and stuff like that. Everybody's got a cross to bear. Oh, and I'm older. I wish I had been younger, wiser 30 years ago. I'd probably have ripped this whole year's worth of stuff off in a few months. Oh, 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, 2 a day. That's going to give us about 28 entries, if my math is correct. And today we have 2 Williams side by side. We're just going down alphabetically, so it's interesting. We find William and William. And first guy is William Ellery. He was born 1727, died 1820. One of the older men of the group there, in his 50s, late 50s, when he signed that declaration. He's 23rd Chief Justice of Rhode Island Supreme Court, so he's very influential in law, and he knows how to argue. And being from Rhode Island, that tiny state, tiny colony, smallest little speck in the massive landscape of United States of America. You can imagine any of the coastal colonies. Well, I wouldn't say any, but from probably Connecticut, right on down through Virginia, Maryland. those individuals are going to be associated or are well versed, educated in trade and the sea, and probably get the earliest news about what's going on in England, since England is dictating what's going on. I don't even know if the king ever came and visited this storehouse. The king just sit over there and um, just watch these boats come in loaded with resources and wealth from this new land. He couldn't even see it over the horizon, but these ships are just pouring in and filling up his storehouse. He must have really felt he was in line with God's will. In some ways he was, because in my belief of God, God raises up nations and regimes and stuff like that. And there's a lot of rhetoric in the Bible about that, and we got to situate that with um, the experience of slavery in America. We've got to jive and do some massage the wisdom of God sometimes in how could we, this powerful God, let bad things happen and all that stuff like that. I'm not going to digress into a my religious ideas, but those are some things to think about. How these godless people, regimes, come to raise themselves up in this God world. And we think of a Satan character who actually rules the earth and goes in and out and whatnot. But this king, it just hit me. Did the king ever visit this wealth producing mechanism on the other side of the ocean? Interesting. So Rhode Island. Now he was an abolitionist, confirmed at 1785. I'm not sure what led to that. And most of our northern guys didn't own slaves, weren't in support of slavery, resisted that. And because the one thing is, England, the colonies belonged to England. The colonies were non-entities. The people there were in the service to the crown. So England is loading up these loading ships with slaves and dropping them off. It's like there's a scene in Cool Hand Luke. Cool Hand Luke's one of my favorite movies. I actually think that's about black folks and not white folks in a chain gang. But anyway, there's a scene where they've got to they're laid down a road, and back kind of in that day, I don't know if they do it anymore. I've seen it. I've seen the roads anyway, where a truck heats tar and some kind of adhesive goes down the road and puts that in it, and men manually have to put sand over it or gravel and mixtures, and that was the road. How they built some of the roads back in the day when Cool Hand Luke was made. So it was like you show up to a work site and if you see shovels, piles of sand, a big truck, a long stretch of road, okay, it's going to be hard work. So part of the discouragement for the colonists had to be, oh man, here's another ship of slaves. That means more work, more management. No, they didn't ask me if I wanted to. I'm looking for a vacation here, so I want to get away. But you keep dumping slaves in here that I have to manage and um, whatnot. into the colonies. So that was a big that was a this is something I found out as I go into the research. You know, so he's an abolitionist. There were other reasons. They didn't. There was also the problem with increasing the slave population is if they ever got it in their heads to revolt, you're outnumbered like 3 to 5 to 1. you know, and they were encroaching on the Native Americans, so they were, oh boy, it was pretty tense. So it was a good idea to let these people go, let them free for on a lot of fronts. I didn't. That's not an exhaustive explanation by any means. Congregationalists, autonomy of the the churches and the congregations, and you'll find all these religions had some uh, ideas and tenets of equality and freedom and all that, but how does that jive and play itself out in slavery? So as I'm going through, I don't know if you're keeping tabs. We'll do a little tally at the end. Uh, but William Ellery uh, didn't own slaves. Obviously, he's abolitionist, and so his congregationalist views kind of were in line with what you think his religion was doing, what you would think it would do. It's also a Sons of Liberty. Now, that's something that I came across, and most of this is from Wikipedia. I'm not doing any deep research. As a Sons of Liberty, so he's part of an organization, secret underground organization. And I haven't actually heard that term probably since grade school. Resistance of England, and they probably circulated papers. And they had secret meetings, and they were organizing and finding who's a loyalist, who's a patriot, and stuff like that. All kinds of this um, cloak and dagger stuff going on back then as they're preparing for some bloodshed against the redcoats and all that. We stumbled upon one of our first Sons of Liberty. We'll probably find more as we go through. We are very early in the list. Now next up is our other William Floyd, born 1734, died 1821, just a year after Justice Ellery there. Floyd was a representative from New York, and he was a land speculator. Now, I wouldn't. That's not surprising to me. Anybody close to the Appalachian Trail, that's kind of our. It's the East Coast Rocky Mountains hills compared to what's out west, but and geologically, we kind of consider the eastern part of the United States, eastern part of the whole Western Hemisphere as as a older in geological time. They're mountains, but they're more rounded. You can tell they've been worn where the West Coast Rockies. It's a continental plates are converging, and there are faults there and things like that. And so they're throwing up new mountains and more challenging terrain. So, but I say that because Representative Floyd was a land speculator, one of his trades. And so, as a land speculator, he's going around. I'm sure he's looking in wilderness, knows a lot of survivalist things like that. He could probably handle a winter pretty well and whatnot. But, I've been driving over the Appalachians a lot. And, so you get to the top of some vista and look out west, and it just continues to go on, almost like you're standing on the shore looking out over an ocean. And it's like, that there's no land. We're on a planet. It's a big place. So I'm thinking that his trade as a land speculator probably fueled his motivation to get rid of England, because any wise person is thinking about resources and rights, and boy, I'm just a non-entity in service to these people across the ocean that don't really care for me. I'm just a number kind of thing. And he's like, we can't let, my guess is, his thoughts is, we can't let England be a part of that. So that gets his wheels turning. He's a Presbyterian. They kind of have this church government thing. It's a Protestant vein religion. So how does that impact his relationship to slavery? He didn't own slaves. I didn't find any relations of slaves to him at all. Which I'm guessing being a wilderness man, he ain't trying to. He likes the outdoors. He's not trying to manage folks and people and be all into that. So he's kind of abstained, we'll say, from the slavery question. What motivated him to sign the Declaration of Independence was he saw the potential. He had that opportunity. He understood the opportunity that the colonists had. It takes, I think it's like 2-3 months, to get wind and get over to the ocean. Then you got to have probably a month to get stuff together. Then get a ship going, and the ship's got to actually cut south and then west, and then it comes back east. So so as you think, it takes a whole long time. Even if you just this one ship, and I would track this one ship, boy, that's about 6-7 months to get it together. So yeah, he doesn't want them to get that beautiful, pristine, virgin, untouched land and just rape it and use him and his other fellow colonists as fodder and workers, which is kind of sad because that is what is going on with the black folks at the time. So, as for him, and as I go through this work, I'm glad I decided to look at the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Like I say, I reiterate it over and over, they just had to, there was a priority, there was a hierarchy, even though that in the end they didn't do it fairly, they had to handle this problem with England before they got to the slaves. And some were better at equal treatment than others. It's complicated, politics and all that. So there's the two other guys, the two bills. Justice Ellery and Representative Floyd tonight. I hope you're enjoying this. Do some research on your own. We want to be thinking critically about the nation in the past. What the different episodes and periods we've been through, who we are today, our identity. Even right into up to the minute modern times, thinking about upcoming 2020 election. We got to put as much. We need a lot of information. We don't have to be follow dogma and be passive in expecting another group, institution, political party, president, parents, jobs to take care of us. Well, in this age, we've really got to be proactive in getting our needs met, lining up with what our wants are, resisting a world that just wants to push us around and make us its uh, just its vessel for prosperity. Just it's some kind of weird human condition that prevails with most institutions and individuals. You know, England wanted to do it with the colonies. When the colonies got free, they did it to the slaves. Before the Civil War, former slaves owned slaves. Black people owned black people. Um, you know, this thing where to exploit, dominate, subjugate another human being is kind of a real problematic aspect of the human condition um, that we're trying to scratch at here among all the other things. We just have a lot of examples from which to draw. All right, I'm out of time. Thanks for hanging out with me again. I'm Tomlin's Nyback, 365 days towards racial change. I'm pretty sure it's day 96. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.